guys, welcome back. We are here to possibly finish The Gingerbread Bakery by Laurie Gilmore. I'm so excited to see how this ends. I think we all know how it's going to end, but let's see how this wedding happens. So let's continue. We left off on chapter 35 now, the wedding. Mac had never been the kind of person to fantasize about his wedding day, but he'd be a liar if he said it didn't do something to him to see Annie walking down the aisle toward him. In a different world, a parallel universe, this could be their wedding. She could be walking to him. Her gaze held his, and everyone else in the room disappeared. Some part of his brain knew that he stood between Noah and Bennett, all in their dark gray suits, a sprig of holly tucked in their lapels. He knew Logan waited at the altar for Jenny. He knew the trees he'd helped Bennett's string lights on were lit up and that the whole barn was twinkling with white Christmas lights and candles. He knew that Estelle and Henry sat in the front row with Jenny's parents as though Estelle hadn't been missing for the past 24 hours. He knew that Annie had played a big role in making this whole day perfect. But as he watched Annie walk down the aisle, she was the only thing he knew, the only thing he saw, the only thing that mattered. The bridesmaids wore deep crimson dresses, or at least he assumed they all did. He hadn't taken his eyes off Annie long enough to confirm that, but he knew that her dress had long sleeves and a high neckline in the front, and it scooped low in the back. He imagined dancing with her later, pressing his hand to her bare skin, if she let him. Her blonde hair was in satiny curls over one shoulder, and when he looked at her face, she had tears in her eyes. And it hit him again that she was so much better than the fantasy. She reached in the front and arranged herself next to Hazel and Kira. The music changed and the guest's attention turned to the bride. Annie's eyes stayed on him for a beat longer, and he winked at her, expecting a scowl in return. Instead, he got a gentle smile before she turned her gaze to the bride. Bennett nudged him from the side. "Is that why we haven't seen you all day?" he whispered. "What are you talking about?" Noah blew out a disbelieving breath. "You two were totally eye-fucking each other that whole walk down the aisle." "We were not. Had they been? Had he just eye-fucked Annie in front of the whole town?" One glance at Jacob's huge grin from the third row confirmed it. When the man started making kissy faces and drawing hearts in the air with his fingers, Mac had to look away. Bennett chuckled. "You absolutely were, but you can tell us all about it later." "I am not telling you two anything." She went from looking at you like she wanted to kill you to that over the course of a weekend. "We definitely need to hear the story," Noah whispered before turning back to Logan to hand him a handkerchief. The big guy had big tears rolling down his face at the sight of his soon-to-be wife. It was sweet, really, and Mac tried to focus on the wedding ceremony instead of on Annie and what she might say after today was over. He hadn't meant to give her an ultimatum, and he didn't even expect her to have an answer for him. He only wanted her to talk to him. He was tired of the silence between them, the half-truths. We are gathered here today," Mayor Kelly began, "to marry two of our own, two people who this town holds very dear." He smiled at both of them, and Jenny reached forward to wipe a tear from Logan's cheek. She looked beautiful in sparkly white lace, like a fairy you would find in a frost-covered forest somewhere, and Mac knew if he were Logan, he would be crying too. "Jenny," Mayor Kelly said, turning toward the bride, "ever since you moved to town, we all knew you were special, and we knew that you were just the one to take care of our Logan. And Logan," he continued, turning toward the groom, "this town and your family and your friends have always wanted the best for you, and we know that the best is Jenny." "Damn right she is," Logan said, eliciting a laugh from the audience. "Love is a funny thing," the mayor went on. "It's not always big or loud or over the top. Most of the time, it's quiet and unassuming. It's a shared cup of coffee on a rainy day or reading side by side together every night. It's finding the person who gets you, the person who will have your back through it all. Your person," he added with a smile. "And since we all know that you found that in each other, let's move on to the vows and get this party started." A few guests whooped at the suggestion. Jenny let out a teary laugh and reached behind her to grab the folded up piece of paper Annie was handing her. She opened it and cleared her throat. "Logan," she started with a slight tremble in her voice, "I never expected to find you. I never expected to find a home here, a life here. But I'm so glad I did. I promise to love you until we're both old and gray, and I'll keep on loving you even after that. I promise to love your family like my own. I promise to never limit the number of chickens you can have. Logan laughed between his tears at that one, and so did Mac. That was love. Unlimited chickens. I can't promise I'll keep our house tidy, but I will always help you make it a home. I love you, and I promise to be your partner from now until forever. The entire bridal party was wiping their tears now. Mac didn't know how poor Logan would make it through his own vows. Jenny was a tough act to follow. Jenny, he started and then stopped to clear his throat. Jenny. Another pause. Mac knew speaking in front of the entire town was the last thing Logan wanted to do. Jenny leaned forward and whispered something in his ear, and Logan laughed. You can do it, she said, pecking him on the cheek. Jenny, he started again. Mac shook his head. Dear God, that's a rough start. But Jenny was smiling, so maybe not too rough. I tried not to like you, but it was impossible because I actually like everything about you. I like how kind you are and how brave. I like how you move through the world looking for what brings you joy. I never lived my life like that, but you bring me joy every day, and I promise to try to do the same for you. I promise to love you with my whole heart forever. Annie caught Mac's eye from the other side of the altar, what he wouldn't give to make the same sort of promises to her. Mayor Kelly was wiping his eyes behind his glasses. That was beautiful, you two, just beautiful. I'm so proud of you both, he said as everyone composed themselves. Now down to the business of it. Jenny, do you take this man to be your lawful wedded husband? Jenny's smile was so big, Mac could feel it in his own heart. I do, she said proudly. And Logan, do you take this woman? I do, he blurted out before Pete could finish his line. Very good, the mayor said with a chuckle. The rings? Noah passed Logan the ring, and he was quick to put it on Jenny's finger, completely skipping the part where he was supposed to say something. But at this point, the man was just ready to be married. Jenny beamed, tears sliding down on her face as she put Logan's ring on his finger. With this ring, I thee wed, she said, following the script, and Logan turned even redder than he already was. Me too, he said, and the audience laughed some more. Mac thought there was so much love in this room, he'd never felt anything like it, and it was all for them, all for these two people that they all loved so much. And maybe for the first time since he'd been back, since the first time Annie told him how much she loved this town, he finally got it. He finally understood how special this place was and how lucky he was to be here. He wiped his eyes. Christ, now he was crying too. You may kiss the bride, Mayor Kelly announced through his laughter. Logan took Jenny's face in his hands and kissed his wife. The whole town cheered. Annie stood from her seat at the table and waited for the room to quiet. When it finally did, she raised her glass of champagne. When you know someone for your entire life, she started, you can get protective of them, sometimes overly so. She gave Jenny a knowing look, remembering the day she and Hazel had warned her to be careful with Logan's heart. Jenny smiled back. As Pete said, you want what's best for them, especially when you know that they are one of the best people in the world. She looked to where Logan sat with Jenny at their sweetheart table in the center of the room. He looked absurdly handsome in his dark gray suit and maroon tie. Handsome and happy, but for a moment she saw him as he was all those years ago, a sad, quiet little boy who she had immediately decided she needed to cheer up. And now Jenny sat beside him, looking stunning in her wedding dress with her dark hair swept off her neck. She sparkled in the muted lighting of the barn, and Annie knew her relationship with Logan would be different since we were 5, when I forced him to be. The room laughed at that. But now Logan has a new best friend, she said, and saw the emotion flicker across his face. And you couldn't have found a better one. I will always be here for both of you, but I'm so happy you have each other. She barely got the words out before the tears started, so she raised her glass and everyone followed suit. Cheers to the happy couple. She sat back down, using her napkin to dab at her eyes, hoping she hadn't destroyed her makeup again. That ceremony had already done a number on it. Luckily, it was Noah's turn next. Hey everyone, I'm Noah. I thought I was the groom's best friend, but I'm just now finding out I'm actually 3rd in line. 4th, Hazel said from her seat beside him, and everyone laughed, including Noah, who shook his head. 4th, I guess, but I'll take it, because for the first 2 years I knew him, I was pretty sure the man hated me. As you all know, that's just part of Logan's charm. More laughs, even from Logan. Jenny, on the other hand, Noah went on, I liked right from the start, and I was pretty confident she liked me too. He winked and Jenny shook her head, laughing. I couldn't think of a better couple, Noah said. I mean, except for maybe me and Hazel. The crowd groaned and Hazel swatted him on the arm. What about us? Kira shouted from her place beside Bennett. Noah chuckled. We can all have different opinions about that, but since today is their day, let's raise our glasses to Jenny and Logan. Again, the guests drank in the bride and groom's honor. Noah sat back down and Hazel leaned into his side. Her curls were tucked away from her face with a pretty silver comb, and while her dress matched Annie's in color, a gorgeous dark red, the cut was different. She'd chosen a lower neckline with spaghetti straps, and Kira had gone with an off-the-shoulder choice. Annie's was modest in the front, but dipped dangerously low in the back. She loved it, and especially loved that Jenny had let them choose what suited them best. It was one more thing that made the wedding feel extra special. Several rounds of champagne later, and the speech portion of the evening had gotten completely out of control, which Annie probably should have seen coming. Somehow the microphone had started being passed around, and everyone in town seemed to have something they wanted to say to the happy couple. Annie thought maybe as co-maid of honor she should put a stop to it, but the bride and groom seemed to be enjoying themselves. So she sat back, kicked off her shoes, and was enjoying the show. That don't go to bed angry advice is all wrong, Isabel was saying, glass of champagne in hand. Sometimes you need to just sleep it off and wake up fresh. Or even better, go to bed and don't sleep, Marissa suggested, eliciting hoots and hollers from her table of rowdy ladies. Isabel raised her glass. Great, even better. Go to bed and don't sleep, she said with a laugh. Cheers to the couple. Cheers to Logan and Jenny. The microphone was passed to Dot, and she stood up. I wanted to say I'm glad you two ended up here together. Deep down, I knew that giving Jenny the cafe was a good idea. I just didn't realize how good it would be. It really worked out for all of us, she said with a smile, looking down at Norm in the seat beside her. I'm so happy for you two, and I'm forever grateful to you, Jenny called from the sweetheart table. Jenny's face must hurt from smiling so much, but Annie was thrilled to see the bride so happy and that they'd pulled this wedding off. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At least she did feel relieved until she looked across the room and caught Max staring at her. What the hell was she going to do about that? It didn't help that he looked unfairly gorgeous in his suit, or that he had watched her walk down the aisle like she was all he ever wanted. She thought about what Pete had said during the ceremony. Was it remotely possible that the man who had broken her heart all those years ago actually might turn out to be her person? I just wanted to say a huge congratulations to my beautiful sister and her new husband, Bennett said, taking the floor. And I also wanted to take a minute to say what an amazing job Kira did putting this wedding together. Kira smiled up at him as everyone applauded. I had plenty of help, she said. Annie and Hazel, the best bridesmaids ever. Daisy for the beautiful arrangements, and a huge shout out to Archer for this amazing food. I couldn't have done it by myself. So many people pitched in. I'm so happy to have such an amazing couple be my first customers, but please do keep us in mind for future large events. Kira North events. Annie smiled. She couldn't help but remember last year at this time when Kira was doing everything in her power to not get sucked into the Dream Harbor vortex. And now here she was planning events for the town. This place had that effect on people. They came here sad or lost or alone until Dream Harbor worked its magic. She looked over at Mac again. Had the town worked its magic on him? Of course. He'd lived here for the first half of his life, but he'd been gone for so long. Was this the place in his heart like it was in hers? She watched him laughing with Noah, and she thought about all the ways he had come back. For 3 years, she tried to pretend it wasn't true, or it wasn't real, or it wouldn't stick. But here he was, friends with her friends, renovating his parents' old house, running his dad's pub. Mac was here in Dream Harbor again. He had set up his life here, and he wanted her. All she had to do was say yes. She turned her attention back to the speeches in time to hear Cliff comparing marriage to fishing and making some sort of obscene rod jokes. Maybe it was time for her to confiscate the microphone. She was about to when Mac took it. He cleared his throat, looking around the room. His gaze stuck on her only for a moment before flitting away. I wanted to say congratulations and to say thank you to Logan. Logan looked up, surprised, his eyebrows raised. Thanks for letting me have a clean slate with you and for being one of the first people to welcome me back to town. It's funny how, when you're young, we feel like we need to get far away from where we grew up, or at least some of us do, in order to find ourselves. And I did learn a lot about myself while I was gone. I lived in a lot of amazing places and I met a lot of interesting people. But in the end, I missed home. I missed the people here. I missed this. His gaze landed back on Annie. She felt her skin flush. Had he really missed her the whole time he was gone? Mac cleared his throat. Anyway, I'm really happy for you, man, and thanks for letting me be a part of it. Cheers to the bride and groom and to Dream Harbor. To Dream Harbor, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses one more time. Chapter 36 now. The wedding, still. Daisy, that guy is totally checking you out, Iris said as she worked through her second plate of cookies. The gingerbread house had been a big hit, but Annie had also made several platters of cookies and pastries for the guests to eat. Iris seemed to be appreciating them very much. What guy? No, he isn't. What guy? Daisy's head swiveled from side to side. Iris laughed. That one over there with the glasses. He's been looking over here all night. Daisy glanced over to where Iris was pointing. Annie, Daisy, and Iris were the only three left at their table. The chairs from the ceremony had been cleared, and a dance floor was carved out between the tables. At the moment, Annie was watching Noah spin Hazel in circles while she giggled. Kira and Bennett had snuck off somewhere about an hour ago, and Annie hadn't seen them since, but she had a pretty darn good idea of what they were doing. Weddings had that effect on people. Who even is that? Daisy asked, and Annie looked at the man in question. That's Elliot, the new architect. He's working on the end, she said. Wow, Jenny really did invite every person in town to this wedding, Iris said with a laugh. I know. Apparently he was standing nearby when she went to the inn to work out the room availability for her visiting family. She felt bad and invited him too. Well, whoever he is, he's looking at Daisy like he wants to get to know her better, Iris said, waggling her eyebrows. She had a hand over her growing belly and her bare feet propped up on the chair next to her. She looked tired but happy as she watched Archer slow dance with Olive. That's adorable, Daisy said, looking at them spinning in circles, Olive perched on Archer's feet. Iris nodded. That's how they get you. Well, that didn't do it. The roast chicken definitely would have. It was so tender I wanted to cry, Annie said, making the other women burst out laughing again. The man knows how to cook, Iris said, that's for sure. Archer grinned at Iris from his spot on the dance floor, and Olive waved. She looked adorable in her velvet Christmas dress, little patent leather Mary Janes, on top of Archer's dress shoes. Something across the room caught her eye, and she came running over to Iris. Is that hot chocolate? She asked, her face filled with intensity of a girl who would go to the ends of the earth for chocolate. A girl after Annie's heart. It's actually a whole hot chocolate bar, Annie told her, with toppings. Toppings? Olive squealed. Marshmallow, candy canes, little cookie bits. Oh, and whipped cream. Whipped cream? Olive was practically vibrating now, and Annie ignored the look of horror on Iris's face. It was all part of the fun, being an honorary auntie. Yep, all the whipped cream you can eat. Daddy, can I have some? Olive turned around to see where Archer was standing behind her, staring daggers at Annie. Annie smiled up at him. Sure, Liv, let's go. Weddings are the best. Olive was already halfway across the room before the sentence was fully out of her mouth. You're welcome, Annie said, and Archer shook his head like he was reassigned to the fact that Olive would never sleep again. You want anything? He asked Iris, leaning down to kiss her. Well, all this talk about hot chocolate. Archer sighed, but the little smile on his face betrayed him. He loved every minute of it. I'll get you one. Extra marshmallows, please. It's for the baby. Archer laughed and pressed another kiss to her lips before straightening. Of course, for the baby. Love you, Iris called as he walked away. Wow, I know, Iris said with a smile. Annie shook her head, debating if she also wanted hot chocolate, but instead turned her attention back to Daisy. So, are you going to talk to him? What? Talk to the architect guy? No way. Not in the market for weirdos that stare at you from across the room. No, thank you. Annie laughed. Good call, although he is a pretty cute weirdo, she said, remembering her short-lived plan to invite him to the wedding as her date. Daisy peered over at him one more time. Cute, maybe, but I've sworn off men anyway. Now hold on, Iris said. You said you swore off love. That doesn't mean you have to swear off men altogether. You know, they're good for other things, she said with a wink. Daisy laughed, tucking her dark hair behind her ear. She looked gorgeous in her slinky black dress. It really was no wonder the weird architect guy was staring at her. I forgot to mention, Annie said, you don't need to worry about your curse ruining this marriage. Really? And why is that? Because Logan and Jenny love each other so much? Nope. Annie said with a grin, because Estelle brought back a magic, olden times nightie that will bring them good luck. What the hell does that mean? Iris asked. I tracked her to New Hampshire today where she was fighting with her ancient cousin over a nightgown that will now feature prominently in my nightmares. Oh my God, see? Annie gestured over to where Estelle stood in front of Jenny and Logan's table holding up that offensive garment. Jenny had a smile plastered on her face, but Logan looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and die. Annie, Iris, and Daisy burst out laughing. Hey, Annie, looks like your sister is stealing your man, Daisy said once they recovered from their fit of giggles. Annie's head whipped to the dance floor where Mac was currently twirling her sister Charlotte in a slow circle. Annie's brain short-circuited. What the actual fuck? If you'll excuse me, ladies, she said, getting up from her seat so fast her empty glasses rattled on the table. No time to track down her shoes. She marched across the room barefoot to where Elliot stood with wide eyes at her approach. I need you to dance with me, she said, grabbing him by the hand. It really doesn't matter, Annie cut him off. I need you to dance with me for one song, okay? We're not getting married or anything. No need to worry. She dragged him onto the dance floor. Poor Elliot took one more glance at Daisy and followed Annie into the throng of dancers. Told you it would work, Charlotte said, looking over his shoulder at where Annie had just charged onto the dance floor. Mac could feel Annie's rage boring into the back of his head. Of course it worked. How many times had they done this? He'd bring a date somewhere and then Annie did, over and over again. They tormented each other. He was tired of it, but if this was the only way to get Annie to pay attention, then he would do whatever it took. She'd been avoiding him all night ever since they had walked back down the aisle together. Her arm had felt so right in his. He hadn't wanted to let go, but there were photos to be taken and toasts to be given. She'd even managed to scramble up the bridal party for the first dance, and he'd ended up dancing with Hazel while Noah got to dance with Annie. He told himself he was going to be patient. He was going to wait for the wedding to be over like he promised he would. But Annie in that dress was making it impossible. It hugged every delicious curve of her, every dip, every delectable bit of her body was on display, and as the night wore on, Mac found himself with less and less patience. So, when Annie's little sister, who insisted he call her Charlie now, offered him a dance, it seemed like the perfect way to spur Annie into action. Except there was a flaw in his plan because as he slowly spun Charlie on the dance floor, he came face to face with Annie in another man's arms. Who the hell was that guy with his hand on Annie's back, his fingertips grazing her bare skin in the exact place Mac had imagined touching all night? The guy from the inn? Whoever he was, Mac wanted him dead. You okay? Charlie asked. You got all weirdly tense there for a minute. Mac cleared his throat and Annie caught his eye over the shoulder of her dance partner. She gave him a satisfied little smirk. I think your sister might be the death of me, he told her. She is the most stubborn person I know, so good luck with that. Yeah, I know that. I've been trying to get her to forgive me for years now. And how's that going? She's dancing with another man, so not great. Charlie raised a brow. To be fair, you're dancing with another woman. Good point, he said as he watched Annie's hands wrap tighter around the man's neck until their bodies were nearly flushed together. He practically growled with rage. Or maybe he did growl because Charlie pulled back, her eyebrows raised. Sorry, do you want to know what I think? She said. Sure, what did he have to lose? He was already failing at this and had been for years. Maybe one of the people who knew Annie best could finally help him figure it out. I know Annie thinks it's some big secret that you two were together for a while there, but I knew. Little sisters always know, and I know how upset she was when you left. Shit, Charlie, I know, but how many times can I say I was a dumb kid and I'm sorry? She shook her head. That's not the main problem. Getting over heartbreak is easy, but you bruised her ego. You know she loves to be perfect, but she was wrong about you. She fell for you, and then you never came back. She hates to be wrong. You made her feel stupid and foolish, and that is something she hates more than anything. What do I do about it? Well, that's the hard part. I'm not really sure. I guess she needs to know for certain that you're not going to do it again. Max sighed. I'm trying. Good, keep trying, and when it works, it will be so worth it. You know her, Max. She might be stubborn, but that stubbornness translates to loyalty when she loves you. That girl will go to hell and back for the people she loves. Yeah, I know, Max said, thinking about their road trip today, all to make sure Logan wasn't upset on his wedding day. Annie and her dance partner turned, and Mac got to look at the man's face. He had dark-rimmed glasses and was blushing as if he was finding this whole scenario overwhelming. Mac almost felt bad for the guy. He knew he had nothing to do with this situation. Thanks, Charlie, Mac said, giving her a peck on the cheek. Anytime, she said, turning to find her date waiting for her. Mac walked over to Annie and tapped her dance partner on the shoulder. Mind if I cut in? He asked, and the man looked instantly relieved, even as Annie looked like she might argue. Go right ahead, he said, quickly releasing his grip on Annie. She's all yours. If only that were true. Annie hesitated, like maybe she was going to leave him standing there like a fool, but after an awkward silence, she stepped into the circle of his arms. Dancing with my sister was a dirty move, she said. You've been avoiding me, Annabelle. I had to do something. Today is not about us. Look around, Annie. You did it. The wedding was beautiful. People went wild for that gingerbread house. I'm pretty sure it was the most Logan cried today, which is saying a lot. The bride and the groom are happy. He gestured to where Jenny and Logan were slow dancing, her head resting on his chest. They did look blissfully happy. Your job is done, so I would argue the rest of tonight can be about us. Surprisingly, she didn't argue, but huffed an angry little sound that blew her warm breath over his neck. Her hands were on his shoulders, holding him at a distance like they were at some sort of middle school dance, and had been lectured by the chaperones to keep space between their bodies. His hands were on her hips, and every once in a while, his fingers grazed the bare skin of her back. He wanted to press his whole hand there and tug her closer. He wanted to feel the full length of her body and that damn dress pressed up against him. I think we regress when we're together, he said, and Annie looked at him with a bemused expression. Oh, yeah? Yeah, we act like we're teenagers again, he said, taking her hand from his shoulder and twining it with his. He slid his other hand to the small of Annie's back and savored her small intake of breath as he pulled her closer. But I'm not a teenager anymore, Annie. I know what I want now. And what's that? Her voice was low and breathy and right beside his ear. She was close to him now, so close he could feel the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. You. It was as simple as that. He'd been too scared to take what he wanted before. Too young, too unprepared, but not anymore. I want you, Annie, and I don't care if you need to fuck me like you hate me, but you're leaving here with me tonight. Is that so? She said like she was going to fight him on it, but there was no argument in her tone, only curiosity, interest. Yes, he said, as soon as we're done here, with whatever little task you come up with to stall for time and whatever bridesmaid duty you feel like you need to do, whatever that's done, I'm taking you back to my place to finish what we started, or to start something brand new. It was a dangerous tactic, being that forceful with Annie. He was still half expecting to get a knee to the groin, but he was out of patience, out of time, out of sanity. Maybe Annie needed him to be stronger in his conviction that this could work, strong enough for the both of them, strong enough to prove to her that this was right, that he wanted her, and that he wasn't going anywhere. Maybe that's what he should have done from the start. Judging by the way Annie hadn't kneed him in the balls and instead had curled up even tighter against him, he might be onto something. He didn't push his luck, but held her close, rocking her to the music, amazed that they had made it this far, that she was letting him hold her in public. That, in and of itself, was a miracle. He trailed an index finger under the line of her dress, and Annie shivered. A little further, and his finger found the dimples above her ass. Torture. Are you not wearing underwear? He whispered. Of course not. Not with this dress, she said, and he could feel her smile pressed against the side of his neck. Christ, if they weren't in a room full of people, he'd lift her dress up right now and check for himself. Maybe we're not going to stay till the end after all, he growled against her ear. I can't wait that long. Annie gasped at the feeling of his words on her skin. I can't just leave, she said. For once, put yourself first, Annabelle. What do you want to do? She pulled back a little, finding his gaze. Her eyes were a bright, beautiful blue as she studied him. She wanted to say yes, he could tell, but she was holding back again, not wanting to make another mistake with him. But this time wouldn't be a mistake. He was sure of that too. What do you want? He asked again, holding his breath, praying for the answer that got them the hell out of there. You, she said finally, the word barely more than a puff of air, but Mac heard it. It was all he needed. He took her by the hand, leading her back to her now empty table. Find your shoes, he whispered a little too harshly in her ear, but he was a desperate man. I'm going to get our coats. He left her there in stunned silence and hoped she would still be there when he got back. Chapter 37 now. Hey, there you are, Logan came up behind her while she was grabbing her strappy heels from where she'd left them under the table. Hey, everything okay? Annie said, glancing around the room for Mac, afraid her plans were written all over her face. I wanted to thank you, Logan said, for everything, but mostly for tracking down Nana today. She told you, huh? Logan rolled his eyes. Yes, it came up while she was giving Jenny that nightmare of a nightgown. Annie laughed. Be careful with that thing. I hear it's a family heirloom and it's lucky. That thing isn't getting anywhere near Jenny tonight, he said, but thank you, really. The gingerbread house was amazing, and I know a lot of this day happened because of you. He wrapped her in his arms and gave her a big squeeze. Annie squeezed back. I love you, you know, she said. Yeah, I know. I love you too. My turn, Jenny said, coming up behind them and giving Annie her own big hug. Thank you for finding Nana, she said, although I'm not super excited you brought her back with that nightgown. Annie winced. Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't get her to part with it. Max slid up to the table with both their coats over his arm and his face flushed as though he'd been running around to find them and make it back in time before Annie changed her mind. Are you two leaving? Jenny asked. Well, I thought things seemed to be winding down. Definitely. Thank you for everything, Jenny said. You should take off. You did an incredible job. Her smirk made it clear she knew exactly what was going on here. Logan, on the other hand, looked back and forth between Annie and Mac like he was confused about why they would be leaving together. Come on, Jenny said, tugging him by his arm. We've got more guests to thank. She pulled him away and left Mac and Annie face to face. Annie was sure there were a million reasons she shouldn't go home with him, or at least there had been, and now suddenly she can't remember any of them. Ready? Mac asked. Ready was not something Annie thought she'd ever be around Mac, but she grabbed her coat from his arm and started her way toward the door. His hand pressed to the small of her back and heat frizzled up her spine. Outside the barn, groups of guests were huddled around several fire pits, snuggled under cozy blankets with cups of hot drinks in their hands. Kira and Bennett were back from wherever they'd gone, looking happy and rosy-cheeked. But Mac didn't let her get waylaid, his steady hand guiding her toward the cars. Are you two leaving? Kira called from her spot by the fire. We have to check on the kittens, Annie called back. Is that what we're calling it now? Kira said with a laugh. Enjoy. Worried about being the topic of gossip tomorrow? Mac asked, leading her toward the car. Not particularly, Annie said, pulling her coat tighter around her. She had her strappy heels in her hand and a pair of boots on her feet to trudge through the snow. Just don't embarrass me. Last time, at least, no one knew what had happened between her and Mac. She didn't know she could handle if it was town news this time. Mac turned to face her. I don't intend to, he said. And what do you intend to do? Mac stepped closer until her back was pressed against the side of his car. His breath was hot on her neck, his hands tracing the curves of her hips. I thought we'd start with a kiss, he said, and Annie realized that even with all their fooling around the past 2 days, they hadn't kissed. It had been over a decade since they had, and suddenly she wanted that more than anything. She stared at Mac in the moonlight, caught in his gaze, waiting. But he didn't make her wait long. His mouth was on hers before she could second-guess it. And once it was there, it was like it had never left. Kissing Mac was the most natural thing she'd ever done. His lips were insistent and hot, pressed to hers in the cold night. Years of heartbreak melted away. She let her hand slip into his hair and his grip tighten on her hips. Soon, his tongue was sliding against hers, urgent and wanting. He pressed her harder against the car, his hands roving over the dips and curves of her body. Like he couldn't wait to get her inside before he touched every part of her, like he had to do it now. This damn dress, he growled into her mouth, lifting one of her legs and pushing the dress up over her thigh, wedging himself there. Annie clung to him, her hands fisted in his suit jacket. Years of tension and hurt and longing finally surging to the surface. Max, she gasped as he pushed against her, sending sparks of pleasure through her body. I've wanted you for so long. I've wanted you forever, he said, sucking the delicate skin of her neck, her ear. It wasn't until they heard boots crunching in the snow toward them that Annie paused, pressing her hands against Mac's chest. We can't do this here, she hissed. We have to go. Mac blinked like he was returning to reality, only now realizing they were in a snowy field between parked cars. The night sky was cold and dark behind his head. We have to go, Annie said again. He kissed her again one more time, quickly, and when he pulled back, his face was lit up like stars. Yeah, okay, let's go. He went around to the driver's side while Annie got in. Luckily, they weren't blocked in by anyone and were able to maneuver out of the field pretty easy. Annie snuck a peek at him in the driver's seat, and he glanced back with a smile. Don't chicken out now, Annabelle, he said, putting a hand on her thigh. He left it there, tracing little circles with his fingers. I'm not chickening out, she said as his fingers inched higher. Are you really not wearing panties? Annie swallowed hard. I told you I can't with this dress. Show me. Annie's heart ratcheted up, her pulse quickening, her blood turning molten hot. I can't. You'll drive off the road and kill us both. Mac let out a low chuckle, and Annie wasn't sure how she resisted him for this long, because right now she felt like she couldn't wait another second. Okay then, I won't look. Annie made no such promise and watched as Mac pulled up her dress little by little, his fingers tugging on the fabric while his eyes stayed on the road. When the hem was high enough, he slipped his hand under her dress, and she gasped at the sensation of his skin on hers. That hand traveled up her thigh until it met the crease between her leg and her hip, the place where Mac discovered she was not lying. Jesus, Annie, he rumbled, completely bare. Annie's whimper echoed through the car. She didn't look at Mac's face, couldn't meet his eye, but she kept her focus on his hand. His hand that had now found the apex of her thighs, one finger dipping down to where she was. She squirmed in her seat. Spread your legs for me, Mac rasped, and she did. Didn't even fight about it. Didn't even want to fight about it. It was nice to not have to think about it, to not worry about what the next step should be. She just did it. Anne was rewarded, with Mac's fingers on her. She grabbed onto his forearm. He pressed harder, his fingers making tight circles, winding her up. I've dreamed about this, he groaned. You dreamed this exact thing? She asked, incredulous even in her pleasure. Annie, I've dreamed about having you in every possible way, he said, quickening his pace. Annie's head dropped back on the seat, her legs beginning to tremble as they made their way down dark back roads to Mac's house. She was close, pleasure building as Mac increased his speed and pressure. Close, so close. Her back arched against the seat, feet scrambling for purchase. Mac, we're here, he said, pulling his hand from her dress. Annie spun to face him, eyes wide. What are you doing? She asked, shock and frustration spiraling through her. We're here, he repeated, flashing that obnoxious smirk. I was almost there. You need to keep going. He chuckled. Now, Annie, if you're going to fuck me like you hate me, I had to give you a little more ammunition, he said before stepping out of the car. What the hell just happened? She sat there in disbelief, staring at him walking to the house. She almost considered calling an Uber and getting the hell out of there. Then she looked down, saw her dress hiked halfway up her thighs, thought about how Mac's hand had felt there, and she really had only one choice. Follow him and fuck his brains out. Okay, I'm going to leave the last 2 chapters for tomorrow. Wow, we ended it on a good note. It can only get better, right? Thank you guys for being here, and I seriously enjoy reading out loud to you guys, and I know other people are going to read this book because it's so popular. It's just more fun to do it with others, even to hear it. I think it's better if you read along because you get more into it when you see the words and hold the book. That's why I have the physical book and I don't read it from a tablet. But thank you guys again for being here. Make sure you're subscribed because it knocks you off on occasion. And make sure you like the video and put down in the comments your favorite winter emoji. That'll be cool. And make sure you hit the bell notification so you get updates whenever I post a video or a short, which is a lot. But I will see you guys tomorrow for the ending of the Gingerbread Bakery. Bye. Oh, I forgot to tell you where we left off. Chapter 38, page 335. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.